This vlog isn't going to be like my other vlogs. It's not going to be the sharp, fast, ultra-responsive style with 10 million pictures plastered all over the place. I'm not even using a script for this video, I'm just using bullet points, so I'm going to kind of wing it here. That's because there's a lot to say on this topic, and I couldn't really put it down into a script. But, yeah, the 8th gen of gaming. It's been, what, more than 3 years since the brick and VCR launched, and that's all I'm going to call those fucking consoles, because so far that's the only thing they're worthy of being called. 3 years on, and I don't have either console, and I have no desire to get them either. It's pretty funny, too, because I got my first 360 in July of 2006, about 9 months after it launched, and I got a PS3 for Christmas of 2008, and I had asked for either that or some money to go out and buy one. So a little more than 2 years, 25 months maybe? So I was sitting there the other day, and I just thought, off the top of my head, why don't I have either of these systems? It's because this generation is a complete and utter fucking mess. It's beyond a train wreck. Like, I don't think there's any saving it at this point. It's so far down the pit, it's not even funny. And in all my years of gaming, like, I've been gaming for 23 years now, I can't ever remember it being this bad. To start off, nothing is shipped complete anymore. Every game that comes out nowadays either requires 5 patches before the thing's in an even remotely playable state, or 2/3 of the game have been cut out to be resold to us as an extra $100 worth of DLC. How many people can remember a time where, once you went out and bought a game, you had it, the whole fucking game, right there on the disc? There was no DLC, there was no microtransactions, there was no 10 million patches to fix the fucking thing, there was no constant internet connection, nothing like that. You went out, you bought a game, and you played it. That was it. You paid full price for a game, you got a full game. Now, I'm not trying to knock the internet in this respect, because there are good sides to having a constant internet connection. Because as much as I love the good old days, they weren't perfect either. There were games that shipped broken, with bad frame rates, or glitches that made the game unplayable, and there was no way to fix it. Unless you were playing on the PC, and even then there was no Steam back then. So you'd have to search high and low all over the internet to find a website that hosted the patch. Nowadays, if a game gets released with a glitch or something like that, small patch could come out and fix it, makes the game playable again. At least that's how it should work in an ideal world, but yeah, that'll be the day. In fact, this even leads me to believe that publishers and developers are intentionally releasing their games in a broken state so they don't have to do any of the bug testing work and can instead use us as unpaid beta testers. And for those of you who still think that's fine and dandy, well, let me ask you something. What if one day the internet just suddenly dies? If I went out and got a hard copy of any PS1 game, or any PS2 game, or something like Tomb Raider Legend or Anniversary, I could play it just fine. You know why? Because those games were shipped in a complete state. I don't need to go and download 50 million patches for the fucking thing. I can play it start to finish. And I'm good. Smooth sailing. Can you say the same thing about any of the games being released today? Can you say, yeah, I can totally go and pick this up for the brick or the VCR, I can just pop it right in, and I don't have to download anything. I can just pop it in and start playing. You know, I got a challenge for you guys. Disable the internet on either one of the consoles if you own them. Just delete all the patches or whatever data you downloaded and try playing the game as normal. Go ahead and try it and tell me how far you get. And I think a lot of this, a great deal of this, also has to do with another very big issue we have. Graphic whores. They've always existed, even back in my heyday, but it has never been this bad. Ever. And a big craze today seems to be all centered around 4K. That's all you ever hear anyone talking about. Sure, you can hear Digital Foundry going off about, oh, parallax occlusion mapping is a little lower on this blade of grass than it is to this one, but everyone and their mother won't shut the fuck up about 4K. Guys, fuck 4K. You know, I'd really love to just grab a 4K TV if I had an extra $1,000, $500,000, whatever, however much they fucking cost. I would love to just go and Just spend a huge chunk of money, grab a 4K TV, put it side by side to the 1080, get an exact replica of my current computer, and fire up Crysis or Painkiller or Just Cause 3 or something like that. Any modern game, 1080p on one display, 2160 on another, and see just how much of a big fucking difference it is. Because I can almost guarantee you, it's not that big a difference. It's not like standard definition to high definition. That was a big fucking change. Even from full screen to widescreen, huge change. This isn't. It's just doubling the pixel count. It's not going to be like warping it into a new fucking dimension of epic looking. It's not going to be anything like that. It's just going to be a sharper image. And some people tell me, oh, it makes a huge difference. Some people tell me it doesn't. I highly doubt it makes a big difference. And that's all anyone is fucking obsessing for, to the point where we now have these mid-console lifecycle upgrades. The Brick Pro and Project Scorpio. Now, I get it, both the Brick and the VCR were very underpowered when they were first released. Something like the Brick Pro should have been the original Brick to begin with. But these new consoles aren't being released because the old ones are too underpowered. They're being released because people won't shut the fuck up about 4K. They're all like, we want native 4K. I'll say it again, fuck 4K. It's not that big a difference, and like none of the games released today even fucking run well with 4K. Even if you have like the absolute latest in PC hardware. I've seen folks running stuff like Crysis or whatever you might have in 4K, it still runs like shit. When they have like a fucking GTX 1080 SLI and 32 gigs of RAM and Intel's whatever new fucking processor they have, it still runs like complete shit. It's not worth it. It's a useless pixel upgrade. Just shut the fuck up about 4K, I can't stress that enough. You know, it seems to me like as the years have gone by and the graphics have gotten better, and the computing power's gotten better, and the processing power's gotten better, the games themselves have gotten smaller, shorter, and easier as everyone is desperately trying to appeal to the mass market and lowest common denominator so they can make back their money due to one major factor: skyrocketing development costs. Warren Spector actually said something in an interview a few years ago. I can't remember exactly where he said it. If I can find the interview, I'll link it to you, or if any of you guys can find it for me, just let me know. Just put it in the comments, and I'll put a link to it in the text. And check the text before you go finding the interview, because someone might have already found it. He said something along the lines of, game development cost today is so sky high that you have to sell anywhere from 2.5 to 3 million copies just to break even, with anything on top of that being a profit. So it's no fucking wonder that all of these business practices of fucking huge amounts of DLC and microtransactions and supply drops and utility drops that you pay real fucking money for are being pushed full throttle forward. Because goddamn, everything seems to have artificially skyrocketed in the past 20 years for reasons X, Y, and Z. So holy shit. We got broken, unfinished games on one side, graphic whores on the other, skyrocketing costs on another. But we forgot one very, very, very important thing. Exclusives. Or lack thereof. You know, most of the games on PS1, 2, and 3 still remain exclusive to this day. You can't get them anywhere else. They haven't been re-released on Steam or any of the newer systems. The only place you can play them is those systems. Now, I believe that if you release a game exclusively for a console, not between a console and the computer, if it's just for that console, it should stay there for at least that console's life cycle. Dead Rising actually got re-released a couple months ago from this recording date on all of the modern systems and on the computer after staying exclusive to the 360 for over a decade. That game did its job, and yeah, I know it was released on the Wii, but we don't talk about that port because it's a piece of shit. Anyways, Dead Rising did its job. It was one of the first games I ever got for the 360. The first one I got was Oblivion, and that was a gift. Now, taking a bit of a detour here, I'm not going to totally blame the fucking consoles, okay? I'm not going to blame, like, the system and the way it works, because having a computer that can go toe-to-toe with Crysis 3 maxed out and still deliver a perfect 1080-60 all the way through, it doesn't really leave me any reason to grab the console ports of those games. Unless they were exclusive to that console. Which is exactly how it was back in the day. You couldn't get Killzone on the computer. You can't get Infamous on the computer. You can't get Resistance Fallen Man or Metal Gear Solid 4 or Ridge Racer 7 on the computer. You can't get Uncharted on the computer or Flower on the computer, but you can get them on PS3. And that gave me a reason to buy the console. I don't have that reason anymore. I have no reason to get it. What games are coming out on PS4 that I actually want? Ace Combat 7? Maybe the Final Fantasy 7 remake? Woohoo, 2 fucking games! Oh, totally worth spending $400 on. So when you add all this up, why should I get one of the new consoles? I shouldn't. Because there's no reason to. They're just hunks of fucking plastic. My opinion on the 8th generation of gaming is that it's a fucking mess. I didn't buy either of the new consoles from the get-go, even though I could have because I had a really bad feeling about both of them right from the start, and I was right to wait. Even if I were to get a PS4 now, we got the Pro model. I could just go out and get that, and I'd have fancier looking graphics, I guess. I'm still waiting on Project Scorpio to see how that turns out, but I don't know how much that's gonna fucking cost. And even if that turns out to be a reasonably priced system, if there's no games for it, what good is it? It's not. And if any of you guys don't have one of the new systems yet, I don't encourage you at all to go out and buy one. In fact, I encourage you guys to build a computer if you want a game. You'll have 90% of the games you can get on consoles, you can play them in higher resolutions, quicker load times, better frame rates, you can use a controller with just about every one of them with the exact same setup that you'd get on the console, and I know what some of you are going to say, Wolf, not all of us have $1,500 that we can just mindlessly spend on a computer like you did. Very true. However, 2 gaming channels, Greenham Gaming and Germ Gaming, which I linked to you in the text, have built computers for around the same or even less than what the current consoles cost, and they can compete with them. Hell, they're even better than they are at gaming, and plus, you'll get so much more usefulness out of having a computer than you would a console. It can do so much more. Like, guys, there's no reason to get either of these fucking hunks of plastic. This generation of gaming is a fucking mess. It's a mess. That's all I can say. There's not one good thing I can say about this generation. Not one. So what do I recommend? I recommend going to those channels, finding out how they built their computers, building one of your own, or getting someone to help you if you know someone like a local computer repair shop or something like that. You'll be able to play the current games better than the consoles can. You'll be able to play all the old games from the previous generations, and you'll get so much more use out of it. And before I forget, you can now use the controllers from both of the new consoles on the computer. Sony just released the official driver support for the PS4 controller, so it would be like you're playing one of the current consoles, and since you can play all the old games, it's just like having real backwards compatibility, which also seems to be in dangerously short supply nowadays. Like, it's just common sense. Don't buy the new consoles, go the PC route, you'll be so much better off.